So welcome everybody. Good morning everybody. Good morning expert panel members and good morning student presenters and good morning everybody else who's come to watch as well. So welcome to Venue B, the second morning presentation. My name is Thea and I'll be serving as the faculty moderator during this session. I'd just like to make you aware that we have a camera crew, all right, here. Okay, so we've got a camera crew behind us and in front of us. That's why we've got all the cameras around the room, because this is being live broadcast at the same time. And at the same time, there's a few constraints with that. So the students are actually not able to move from behind the podium. And I'm getting instructions as to where I should be standing at the moment. Okay, so for this session, we have 3 student presenters. And each student will present for 15 minutes. And then following the 15 minutes, we have 5 minutes for feedback and questions and so on. Okay, and I think I don't have to tell you anything else. Okay, we have a strict time limit. So I'll just make sure all the students stick to the 15 minutes. And we also have to stick to the 5 minutes of feedback. Okay, so we'll begin with our first student, CISSY Zhao, who, sorry, I can't pronounce her name. But before we do that, I'll introduce the panel members to you. So up the end, we have Mr. Barry Lamb, who's Senior Food and Beverage Operational Support Manager at MGM. Okay, and next to Barry is Mr. Orson Wong, who's the Council Chairman of the Macau Cultural Heritage Association. And then Mr. Celia Cheong, who's Vice Director General of the Macau Heritage Ambassadors Association. And finally, Ms. Nancy Wong, Director of Employment and HR at Wynn Macau. So we're really lucky to have such a good team of expert panel members. Okay, Sissy, so you can begin now.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm CISSY, IFT senior student, as you know, a formal PR intern at MGM, and as well as a volunteer teacher. That's why I choose the topic, the motivation of volunteer teachers in Western China. And this is the agenda for today. Without further ado, let me start with the introduction part. To begin with, I will give a brief introduction of the term of volunteerism. It is combined 2 words, volunteer and tourism. And according to Wynn, those tourists who, for various reasons, volunteer in an organized way to undertake holidays that may involve the aiding or alleviating material poverty of some groups in society. So in that case, volunteer teachers would sign up for a volunteer organization or programs, and they deliver the volunteer service in Western China, especially rural areas. And then I will deliver the status quo of education in Western China. According to the map, Western China, including 6 provinces, 1 municipality, and 5 autonomous regions. And in terms of the education condition, there was a reform of fundamental education in China at the end of the 1990s. In terms of the faculty staff and the material supplies, education resources were insufficient in remote areas. And due to the reform, all of the rural schools abolished, and the local teachers without a qualification or certification were dismissed. Thus, students in the countryside didn't have schools to attend. In that case, and based on the philosophy of to teach someone how to fish is better than to give him a fish, volunteer teaching programs and organizations came up and increased rapidly in recent years. Existing studies of volunteer motivations are mainly focused on Western countries, with only a small number related to Asian volunteers. Thus, I will have the 3 research questions. What are the main motivations of volunteer teachers in Western China? Are they satisfied with their experience? And do they intend to volunteer again or recommend the program to others? Next, I will move on the methodology parts. Given the complexities of the volunteer context and the lack of previous research into this area, a qualitative approach is sound. It allows for an in-depth exploration of motivations based on a small number of people. As a result, the researcher can develop a deeper understanding of their attitude and motivations. In-depth semi-structured interviews are appropriate in the situations where the researcher have a strong interest on the research topic. It is not easy to collect data through quantitative method, since limited people to participate in the specific activities or have similar experiences. So all interviewees were the previous volunteers of Plan, a volunteer teaching program in mainland China since 2014, with the mission of supporting by volunteer teaching and kindness. As you can see, according to this table, all of the 20 interviewees are from different places or areas in mainland China. The ages are ranging from 21 years old to 27 years old. And the majority are students, especially university students, and a few of them were employed. All interviews were conducted from December 2020 to January 2021 in Mandarin. It is the mother language of both sides, and 19 interviews were held online via voice call on WeChat, and one physical interview was conducted in Zhuhai, since the interview and interviewer were in identical city at that time. All the interviews lasted at least 1 hour or even more. 3 points of focus covered in every interview: the motivations before volunteer teaching, the experience or feelings during the volunteer teaching, and the changes or influences after volunteer teaching. Next, I will focus on the findings. There are 4 main themes of the volunteer teaching motivations, and then I will elaborate one by one, specifically and in detail. Let's say the first factor in the theme 1, family environment. There are 4 sub-themes: family education, family tradition, family occupation, and family lifestyle. According to interviewee 1, she mentioned that when I was in primary school, my family began to provide the children from a low incomes with the education funding until they entered a university. I grew up in this kind of family tradition and was moved by the act of kindness of my parents. The second factor in the theme 1, school climate. There are 5 sub-themes: involvement in volunteer associations, encouraged by of my parents, knowledge-related major, engagement in volunteerism, and publicity of national policies in China, in school, such as China's Far West program in university, project of education for poverty alleviation. As you can see, the frequency of this kind of theme is up to 31. It is the highest one. According to interviewee 4, he mentioned a senior student in the meeting of volunteer club shared with us her volunteer experience in Africa to protect the wildlife animals. It touched me deeply, and I intended to do a great thing as well at that time. Interviewee 17 also mentioned, my first volunteer teaching was occurred due to the promotion of the project of education for poverty alleviation in my university. The third factor in the theme 1, social atmosphere. There are 4 sub-themes: groups of volunteer teaching, organization, volunteer experience satisfaction, touched by the internet, and inspirations from traveling. According to interviewee 2, the direct motivation is an online article which elaborates the pros and cons of volunteer teaching in detail. It inspired me to decide to experience it personally. As you can see, the social has positive influence among the Chinese younger generations. Then I will move to the theme 2. The first factor is escape. There are 4 sub-themes: escape from the reality, wanted to go somewhere where nobody knows me, get tired of utilitarian circumstances, lost in life in terms of study or work, pressure from the family or job. Interviewee 10 mentioned suffering from sexual harassment in the first job, in addition, pushed to get married by my parents, all sort of pressure made me can't stand at all. I was dying for going a place where no one knows me. The findings of this study shows the most young volunteers in China are very stressful by the current life and occurred an idea escaping from it, while previous findings were that the volunteers has little resistance to the present life and craved for relaxation through volunteerism in the context of Western countries. Another factor in the theme two, novelty. There are three sub-themes: trying something new and challenging, wanted to experience life in rural areas, and curiosity. According to interviewee 20, he mentioned, volunteer teaching could tackle my curiosity since I wandered the areas without a sound education system. Challenging life experiences and new things in the remote village stimulated waves of students who grew up in family with good social economic background and strong financial support to participate in volunteerism. The theme 3 is about the expression of values. There are 5 sub-themes. Volunteer teaching is meaningful, great, and worthwhile. Willingness to help, caring, purity, and the sense of thanksgiving. According to interviewee 6, she mentioned, I used to be a student helped by this volunteer teaching organization, 孩子 Plan. Now, I have entered the university. I have the ability to be a teacher and to help students who need help and to give back to the organization. According to the previous findings, Clary stated the volunteer participates in volunteer service based on the chances that the volunteerism offers for ones to express values linked with altruistic and humanitarian. The last theme is career development. There are 4 sub-themes: childhood dream, abundant teaching experience, career path, and self-testing. Like interviewee 12 mentioned, I'd like to test if my personality is suitable for being a teacher after graduation in the future. Interviewee 9 also highlighted, I intended to work public welfare in the future for my lifetime. Volunteer teaching was just my start point. Similar to other studies, the career factor was turned out to be an important motive to engagement in volunteer work. And now I will move on the part of the concluding. In terms of the first research question, there are 4 main themes of the motivations of young Chinese working in rural volunteer teaching programs. Family, school, and society showed the irreplaceable functions, and young Chinese sought to try something new and different to escape from reality. I called escape and novelty, and then followed by the expressions of values. Next, career development was highlighted by a cluster of university students. To a large extent, the findings for this paper are in line with previous studies on the motivations for volunteerism. Escape and novelty, expressions of value, and career development coexisted, concluding. Except the first motivate, family, social, school influences are the most unique motivates among the young generation volunteers in China. With regard to the second research question, are they satisfied with their experience? Majority said yes, such as a bunch of volunteers participate in other kinds of volunteer activities. For instance, environmentally friendly activities, wildlife animals protection campaigns, etc. As for the third research question, do they intend to volunteer again or recommend the program to others? I would like to say 孩子 Plan is a volunteer teaching organization with high retention rates, and it was highly recommended by its alumni. In terms of the contribution, this study makes a very useful contribution to the existing academic research, as it filled the gap of the research on the motivations of young Chinese younger generation in references to the volunteer education. It is also of practical usefulness to volunteer organizations to better understand how to retain the current talent and to attract the potential volunteers based on finding an answer to the motivations of this activity. However, there are also a series of limitations about my research. All interviews are from one identical organizations. Future studies could select participation from a wide range of organizations in order to examine if the findings remain consistent. This study is focused on volunteering in one sector, education. Motivations for volunteer amongst the young Chinese may differ across sectors such as expo, concert, film festival, and so on. The further researchers in this kind of context can focus on what the volunteer teachers have gained and learned. And this is my references list. Thanks for your listening.
Thank you, CISSY. It's really good to learn about volunteer teaching in China. So I'll turn over to the expert panel for any feedback and comments and questions.
Thank you. Very good presentation and very thought out and laid out presentation. Well aware of your limitations and suggestions as well. My question would be, since from your study, you have said it as well, is mainly focusing on the education sector and from the same group. And what I have realized is that most of the volunteers that you have interviewed are from the education, or actually are students and from the academic side. And I'm just wondering this, my first question would be, is that the case for the entire, I don't know, the Haiji group, that most of the volunteers are actually from, are students, or is it not the case? And if so, how would you suggest to expand or to attract people that are not from the academic to be part of the volunteer as well?
Okay, first of all, let me thank you for your question. And I would like to say, as you can see, according to my interviewee profile, majority are students. Since the fact of the volunteer teachers in the volunteer teaching program or organizations, majority of them are students. Yes, and you mentioned that how can they attract the person or the people beyond the academic industry or beyond the academic field? I would like to say, since according to my interview process, a few of them were employed as well. And according to their feelings or feedback, I think we can look into or gain insights into the psychological side of them, because they were not happy with their current life or current job. They have their concerns about the current lives. So we can attract them in with regard to this kind of film or realm. Yeah.
Thank you. So like attracting them to go on a tour or a trip with a goodwill benefit. Okay, thank you.
Yes, yes.
Yes, I just heard another presentation on volunteer just now. It's very interesting to see some of these works particularly popular in China, and the research is also conducted in an organized way. So it's really a very interesting presentations in overall. My question to you is just taking reference from the previous ones on volunteers. So I understand the motivations for these participants into the program, and also what's the benefits from the social point of views or to the people, for the students in particular participating in this campaign. So from the tourism point of view, as it is a volunteer tourism,
yes.
So what are the possible benefits associated from this volunteer program to the particular destination, in your opinion? Because it's not mentioned in the presentation, right?
Sorry, I couldn't catch the last sentence.
What are the benefits or what are the impacts from such volunteer tourism activities to these places, economically, socially, culturally, or environmentally?
Okay, as I mentioned before, the volunteer teaching venue is rural villages in Western China. I think the tourism resources are very abundant in that kind of areas, and it's totally different from the cityscapes. I mean, the tourism resources in the city. I think they can promote the tourism resources to the public according to the volunteer teaching value, according to their experience, according to the Western China, I mean the rural village sceneries. Yes.
At first, thanks for your presentation. I think this is a meaning topic for me to know more about the frontier teachers. But I have one question is about the frontiers, because I saw all of your frontiers come from the 孩子 plan. Yes, I want to know what is the reason why you choose this plan. Because I know there is lots of different kind of plan in China.
Yes, definitely. There are lots of volunteer teaching organizations in mainland China. Why I choose Haizi Plan? The reason is very simple. Because I have participated in this volunteer teaching program in 2018. Yes, I was an alumni of Haizi Plan. Yes. Okay, thanks for your questions.
Sorry, our 5 minutes are up for the questions, so we have to thank you very much for your input and feedback. We have to move on now to the next presenter, EMILIA. Yeah, EMILIA Yao Yu. Okay, I hand over to you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is EMILIA. Today, I will introduce my thesis. My thesis topic is pandemic influence travel behavior and preference, the case of the COVID-19 impacts on Chinese tourists. And this is my table of the content. During my presentation, I will go through these 6 parts to introduce my studies. And the first part is the introduction. So at the beginning of the introduction, we will have the overview of the research background. So in the 21st centuries, the world has faced 4 major pandemics. However, the COVID-19 has the most considerable impact on the world. It influenced the whole society and the industry. And according to the World Health Organization lastly report, the confirmed cases of the COVID-19 has more than 116 million, and the confirmed cases are increasing every day. So many countries have carried out various measures to keep the COVID-19 under control. Around 19% of the world population subject to certain levels of the travel restriction, closure of the burdens, home state lockdowns. So it will shock the development of the tourism market. And nowadays, there is an increasing awareness of the impact of COVID-19 on tourism. So this picture from the World Health Organization shows the COVID-19 situation. We could see that the deeper the color, the more the confirmed cases. So I choose China as my research country. The reason why I choose China as my research country, because China's market plays key play in the global tourism market, and it is the major outbound and inbound tourism market in the world. However, under the COVID-19 impacts, the Chinese tourists account for the 10% of the global tourists was affected. And my research motives is examine the recovery of the tourism industry and enhance the tourist confidence to facing this public health crisis. Based on the preview introduction, here are my research objectives. My main objective is to explore the change of the Chinese tourist behavior and preference under the COVID-19 pandemic. And my another sub-objective is provide the effective suggestion to help with the recovery of the China's tourism market from COVID-19. And let's move on the literature review. Pandemic impact has drawn a considerable attention to tourism studies, and there are the impacts of the pandemic emerging from a short years. My research direction is the pandemic impact on tourist behavior and the preference. And this picture shows the model I used. I chose the part of the model proposed by Wynn, Koza, and others studied. And this model have not yet demonstrated. So there are two research gaps in present study. The first gap is there is a few studies focused on the Chinese tourist behavior and the preference under changes under COVID-19. And the models proposed by the Wynn haven't demonstrated. So this part is the methodology. Consider the large population of the Chinese tourists. I choose the quantitative approach to collect the data. And I choose the online questionnaire because the online questionnaire is cost-effective and it could collect more data quickly. And there are 3 sections in my questionnaire, including screening question, general questions, and the demographic questions. And there are 4 parts in my section 2. All of the question asked in section 2 was based on the models I introduced. And this is the factor in section 2. There are 4 dimensions, and there are 9 factors related to these 4 dimensions. And I will introduce them later. And my research objective is Chinese tourists. I spent 1 month to collect the data, and the total number of the respondents is 423. However, there are 80 respondents didn't have any travel experience. So the total number of the valence questionnaire is 405. The all data analyzed by the SBS system and online tour analysis. And after the reliability test, the Comma Alpha shows my questionnaire is reliable. And let's have the look of my findings. This is part of the demographic information, and I will choose age and educational levels to introduce. Most of the respondents aged between 18 and 35 years old, because the millennial generations are very active users in internet. So I use the online questionnaire. Most of the respondents aged between this year's periods, and the most of the respondents are colleges graduate students. And the second finding is the change of the tourist travel behavior and the preference. There are 2 open-end questions in my questionnaires, and one of the open-end question is, how has your travel behavior changes due to the COVID-19? I process the respondents' answers to the word frequency query text and match this word cloud. And the words showed these word clouds was mentioned more than 2 times. The words of the size of the words equals to the word's frequency. We could see that the tourism, pandemic, and the fixed months were mentioned for many times. And in order to note the actual number of the frequency, I made this table of the high frequency of keywords. This table shows the words mentioned more than 10 times. And we could see that the fixed month has mentioned more than 50 times. So the Chinese tourists were more concerned about the fixed months when they travel. And this is the last findings. The factor of the Chinese tourist behavior and the preference. I use the pair sample t-text to compare the means before and after COVID-19. And the yellow highlights shows the COVID-19 has greatly changed Chinese tourists' perception toward risk factor. And the green highlight shows Chinese tourists' perception changes toward risk factors. And this is another part of the table. According to the results from the pair sample t-text, I summarize this factor in this page. There are 6 factors change in positive. And I find that the Chinese tourists were more concerned about discrimination when they traveled. And secondly, the Chinese tourists will choose the high quality destination, destination with the high quality destination infrastructure and the medical facilities. And they will before they make a decision of the destination, they will care for the destination image, such as the pandemic situations. And they will prefer to buy the travel insurance. In terms of the dining behavior, they will choose the dining together instead of the, they will choose the spirited dining instead of the dining together, and they will choose the more takeaway foods. And the psychological well-being has changed greatly compared to the other factors in change in negative. And it means that Chinese tourists were more nervous when they travel. And let's make conclusions. My study found that the COVID-19 has greatly changed the Chinese tourist behavior and preference. And my study also confirms the model proposed by Wong and other studies. And as for the contribution, the theoretical contribution is my study supports the present study about COVID-19 impact on Chinese tourist behavior and preference, and offers theoretical contribution to pandemic and tourism literatures. And as for the practical contributions, I will offer some effective suggestions to China's tourism industry as recover from the COVID-19. And here are some suggestions to China's tourism industry. And the first dimension is the travel patterns. The travel agents could design more independent travel choice and development more nature-based travel options. He could not only reduce the social content, but also reduce the Chinese tourist nervous when they traveled. And the second dimension is the destination management. The first is destination managers could provide the high quality infrastructure and enough medical facilities to attract tourists to come to travel. And they could enhance the destination image by holding more events and promote more local traditional foods. And local government could provide the free fixed months at the destination because the Chinese tourists were more concerned about the fixed months when they traveled. And the tourism companies could cooperate with the insurance companies to offer the offerable prices of the travel insurance. And the third is the dining behaviors. To prevent the cross-contamination caused by the dining behavior, the restaurant manager could serve the customer food by portion, provide the communal chopsticks and spoons. And they could provide the in-house disinfectant supplier and fixed mount in the restaurant. And for the customer who choose the takeaway food, they could give another discount. And the last dimension is the transportation patterns. The transportation managers could disinfect the public transportation to keep the transport clean and monitor the driver body temperature regularly. And the last one, they also could provide more disinfect supplier for passengers. So all of my suggestions not only applicable to China, but also to other countries. That's all of my presentation. Thank you. If you have any questions, you could ask me.
Okay, thank you, Emilia. Very timely topic. Okay, I'll hand over to the panel.
So you mentioned several times in the research about the psychological well-being. Can you explain a little bit more about that and a little bit more precise about this point?
The psychological well-being means the Chinese tourists. The question I asked in my questionnaire is, do you feel nervous when you do you feel comfortable when you traveled after the outbreak of the COVID-19? And the most of the respondents answers that they were more nervous compared to the outbreak, compared to before the COVID-19 outbreak. So the psychological well-being means they were more nervous and they will feel uncomfortable because the local pandemic situations. Yes.
Hi, a very timely presentation and topic, I think, because we are all in the pandemic together. My question would be, from your study, I think especially from your secondary research as well, has it revealed that these influences or these changes in traveling pattern, is it short-term or long-term? Meaning once the pandemic is over, for example, when SARS was here, when the swine flu was here, of course, I strongly believe that there are changes in traveling pattern and decision-making as well. But were these changes long-term? Does it carry on, or will it be gone as the pandemic finishes or fades away?
Sorry, because my model is used the when COSAT they study. So in these models, there is no mentions about the long-term and the short-term dimension. But after I collect the data about in the open-end questionnaire, I found some answers. They will choose the short-term destination after the outbreak of the COVID-19, because it is more, it will decrease the social content during the go to the destination. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's a really relevant topic on COVID-19, and I also did some background check on this topic, particularly because I'm going to also teach a subject on seminars on tourism and hospitality industry. So it's quite relevant in terms of what you have done for the research, particularly in understanding visitors' behaviors changed. And it's just a curious questions on how do you think about this change leading to the change of the industry in responding to the change of these Chinese tourists' behaviors, particularly in the case of Macau, from hotel sector to tourist attractions? To what extent do you think these change leads to also the change of their operations? I saw some of the contents in terms of dining experiences change, so we should provide more takeaway boxes or options for visitors. But on top of these things, in terms of their tourist experience as an overall package, what do you think this change will lead to, or give them also other opportunities for providing extra services that can help to enhance their experiences, not to sustain what they have been experienced before the COVID-19?
Sorry, can you, I cannot catch out your question.
So on top of some of the suggestions that you have mentioned in the presentations, what possibly be other potential opportunities for the tourism sector under the COVID-19 that can help to enhance or further develop their tourism activities or products for the visitors?
Sorry, now I cannot answer this question, and after I have the question, I will approach to you.
Chloe and K-pop culture. Sorry. Thank you, sorry. Okay, Chloe, when you're ready. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chloe. It is my great honor to be here to present my study. So my topic will be how Korean pop culture motivate travel behavior of fans, lens from self-expansion theory. So here is my presentation outline. For the first part, I will talk about the introduction and some of the previous study. In the middle part, I will talk about my methodology and then my findings. For the last part, I will talk about the discussion and then some of the sum up. So for the introduction, did you know what is K-pop? Did you have any idea of what Hallyu is? So Korean wave is the word that directly translated from the Korean word Hallyu. It's referred to the phenomenon of Korean culture and pop culture. So to give you some ideas, in 2003, one of the very classic Korean drama, Jewel in the Palace, has the copyright exported to 91 countries. In 2012, Gangnam Style is the first Korean song that hit the American Billboard chart. In 2019, the Korean movie Parasite is the first Korean movie got nominated and won 6 awards at the Oscar. In 2021, BTS is the first Korean group got nominated and won 4 Billboard Music Award. So my purpose of the study will be how Korean pop culture motivate K-pop fans to mark Korea as a travel destination in terms of their attitude and behaviors. So to support my study, I have researched on 4 areas. First, Korean pop culture and special interest tourism. Second, characteristic of tourists, their motivation and behavior. Third, experience and destination image and the power of social media. Fourth, self-expansion theory. So special interest tourism is to tackle people's special needs. As nowadays people are more self-focused, they realize they have the right to do the improvement to enhance their life. So special interest tourism can help them to tackle their needs and then fulfill their desire. And then for this part, fans identify they are faithful and then have high level of royalty. So they have a strong motivation to travel to country that they like. So for like K-pop fans, they have a strong motivation to travel to Korea as their beloved singer is a Korean. For this part, it is not only benefit for the for the marketer to put the information online, but also for the overseas K-pop fans, they can visualize their imagination and then give them a broader, wider, deeper degree on involvement and engagement. So there's a limitation on people's ability. So it is more obvious on the it is more obvious on the overseas K-pop fans. So when the star asks you 안녕하세요, 오늘 뭐 먹었어요? So once they realize that the language barrier is their limitation, they have the motivation to overcome these difficulties. Yeah, so here is the beginning of the self-expansion. And so they start to learn Korea to master this language and then to have a more direct connection with other fans. So my methodology, I choose semi-structured interview because I believe that I can observe their emotional changes during the interview. So my criteria of picking the interviewee is they are the hardcore fans, and how to define they are hardcore fans. They have to went to Korea at least twice and then attend to 2 Korean pop culture music concert. So my question will be around those 3 aspects. First, personal perspective towards Hallyu, and second, the power of K-pop, and third, the homage travel behavior. So my major finding would be most of the probably all of the interviewees, they agree K-pop and Hallyu is oriented from Korea, and they Hallyu is not only about the K-pop songs, the K-pop movie, the the K-drama, but also have other forms, so like K-fashion, K-beauty. So they think the DNA of Hallyu is K-pop, and then Hallyu is part of the Korean culture. It is getting more awareness in the international stage, and then since K-pop culture is have a higher acceptance in the youth, in the young generation, so it's inspired them to get self-motivated and self-determination. The second, how K-pop have an impact in their life. So they said their ideal figure allows them to have a better version of them. So because they seem the ideal figure is so perfect, so flawless, so they want to be a better version of themselves. And then it's increase the in-depth communication, because they will have a connection with other fans. So here is the simple diagram of how it's impact on them. So once they realize they have a limitation or they have an interest on pop culture, they will do something to cope with the limitation, to overcome the difficulties. And then, so for the intellectual, they learn Korea, they learn this language. And for the emotional, they live their life like a Korea. They dress like a Korean. They eat like a Korea. So so here is the beginning of the self-expansion, and then they consistently perfect it until they think they are 100 perfect. So this they will consider this is their accomplishment. For the homage travel behavior, this is the real so they really take action to travel to Korea. They really take the travel to fly all the way to Korea. So here is so I will call this is the level of solidification. So then their needs of evaluation, their needs of attachment will motivate them to take an extra mile to chase their dream. So they are not only talking on this, they are not stressed from the surface. Once they realize once they know the K-pop star is going to have a K-pop concert, they will take action to do the planning and searching. They will seek the way out to get the ticket, and then they will really to take up their time to travel to Korea and then watch the concert to fulfill their need. So here's the finding that I conduct. So once K-pop came into the life and then ring the bell, they turned into fans, and then they will to solve their curiosity, they will take action to that. So in the earlier stage, it is more on the scratch on the surface, and this is more like they absorb the information and then do the digest internally. So they learn the information, they learn the language, they exchange the context with their friends. So once they invest more time and then know what they really like about it, the later stage, they will really take action to travel to Korea. Yeah. So here is some of the example that from my interviewee. So he wants to know about the history of K-pop. So he visit the SM Town Museum to get some knowledge and then educate his thinking about his thought of K-pop. So why K-pop concert trip is so attractive? So once the K-pop fans associate these happy memories with this destination, they have the hope. This is like a hook. So they will go back to that destination again. So here is the three impact that I think is the most important. So first, their internal attract attention. Their internal attention, which means they might have the celebrity crush toward a certain star, or they want the emotion of travel experience, because once they travel to Korea, everything is Korea. They speak Korean, they meet the Korean. Yeah. So after the fans really get to the Korea, and then watch the concert or do some what they call fans activity, they will have the affiliation. They fulfill their affiliation. They think, oh, I'm really the real fans of like the BTS or real fans of Girls' Generation because I watched their concert in Korea. So, and a part of that, they'll also do the activity that is beside K-pop concert, K-pop music. So they will go site visit, or they will have some, they have a live like Korea. So so here is the example for myself. So I traveled to Korea after I watched the music concert. I want to be like more like a Korean. So I eat kimchi every meal. I drink iced Americano every day, because in Korea there's a lot of coffee shop. And then I order fried chicken in the middle of the night. So I act like a Koreans to try to absorb, to try to really dig into it, how Korean is live. So my conclusion, refer to the case of Korean and K-pop. I think Macau really have the ability to create our own Macau pop. So yeah, so after we find some talented, we can utilize their fame to promote, to showcase Macao's culture, because Macao culture is quite diverse. We are not beside the gambling. We have beautiful scenery. The harmonies of contemporary culture and the Western culture is quite balanced. So we can refer to the case of that. We refer to the case of Korean. We can use the kind of a new style to promote Macao's culture. Yeah, so here is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Chloe. That was really interesting topic. Yeah, I'm sure the panel will have some questions and comments on your presentation.
I think this is the interesting topic, and this is the common issues also exist in the teenagers. I have one question is about, at last you talk about the Macau government can try this new K-pop culture to promote the Macau tourism.
Yes.
Do you have any idea about this? Can more detail to tell us?
So I know nowadays Macau, they have the trainee to like really have a mature system to train the teenagers to be like a pop star. So I believe after a few years, once they get matured, we can invite them to collaborate, to have a collaboration. And then we can set a theme for them. So like he can film a drama that is about Macau's history. So then that can showcase Macau culture and history. Yeah, so that is my thought about that. Yeah, and additional explanation, the success of K-drama is not how success on they market the audience, is how the way they export their culture. So I think we can refer from the case of that to express and then to promote our Macau culture.
Yes, very interesting topic. And also, I think K-pop is always a subject of interest in destination promotions and management. But my question to you, actually, very interesting one is, I know it's very popular, K-pop. I know BTS is very famous, even to younger generation. I always ask this question, is why do you like BTS? So what makes BTS so special to you that you need to learn Korean and to be attached with them?
So to refer my study, you can see in here, the very bottom left, personal hardship. So my experience, I had a very kind of a dark time back in the days when I was in high school. And BTS, the song, the lyrics they wrote actually give me strength. So yeah, I think BTS for me is not only a pop star, it's for me is a life coach for me to have the hope to overcome the difficulties. Yeah, so that's why I personally I really thank them. Yeah, so that's why I want to travel to Korea to really see them in real person.
Thank you for the very interesting, as everyone has said, and very focused study and presentation as well. Well done. I think my my question is actually half a question and half I think suggestions as well. It would be great if you can answer. But I think like K-pop culture, and just like any trend that we do see, either it be a music, fashion, or food trend, they always have a lifespan. So they start and eventually they may die out, depend on what you do with it. So I think my question is, how would you, if Macau, like you suggested, do start a Macau pop culture, or how can K-pop actually sustain the advantage of, using this to attract people to go to their, country or as a destination, or to keep them interested into their pop culture?
Yeah, this is thank you for your question. I also think this is the question that our nowadays society have to think of it. So I think to keep one industry to constantly to work out is not it cannot be one side effort. It have to be collaborate with different parties. So I think we need, first of all, we need the Macau society to accept that teenager can chase their dream in terms of art side. So like dance, sing, because nowadays, Macau society are not really keen on their kids to go on to develop their interest on the entertainment side. So first of all, I think the society need to get more matured. And then second, the government have to put more resource and an investment on this entertainment industry. So why K-pop is so successful? Because the Korean government invest a lot of money and support, and even set a policy to help this help this industry growth. So, but Macau nowadays, they don't have this at all. So yeah, so the government policy have to get ready for that, and then to keep it more sustained. Sorry, I cannot give you a proper answer at this moment, but I will reach you out after I figure it out.
No problem. Very, very good. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So, okay. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Okay. So now we've finished the 3 presentations, and I'll give each of the students a certificate. If you can come out one by one, you can just wait there if you like, Chloe. Okay, so CISSY, first, if you can come out and I'll receive your certificate for your presentation. Okay, so we have black lines here to tell us where to stand. Okay, so there's CISSY. Congratulations. Oops, sorry. Okay, one more. Okay. Okay, and next, if you just stand over there for a moment. And next, EMILIA. Which black line? Okay. Okay. These are the correct black lines. Okay. 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 Just wait there for a moment. And finally, Chloe. Oops. Chloe. Okay. No, sure. Okay. Okay. And could I ask the panel to come out and we can have a group photo? Come on for a group photo. And yeah, just hold up your certificate. The panel can come out. We just have a group photo. Thank you. Oh, good idea. Yeah. Darren, you can. Yeah. Is this okay? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your feedback. You two, both carry presentation.